Welcome everyone to the PYRESWAP show for another exciting episode of Market Monday. And I hope you guys can hear me. I hope I'm quite audible to everybody who is in fact in attendance. And welcome back. Welcome back. I think this is going to be a pretty exciting week. First off, I want to say that the fear and greed indexes for CoinMarketCap and for Alternative.me, I just measured this a second ago. Fear and greed indexes. We've got 56. So CoinMarketCap ran this in at 56, which is a neutral. But Alternative.me, they actually brought this in at 61 for greed. So the fear and greed indexes at least imply that we are in some sort of configuration between neutral and greed. Maybe that means something. Generally speaking, as far as market news goes, it seems to be overall kind of a pretty boring week. Although September is over, right? September is over, and I believe that it was in the earlier part of this month I was describing that September is generally a sad month in the markets, right? September is a sad month in the markets. So in theory, October is normally a little bit more upbeat, but again, September is over, so I guess it doesn't matter. Other than a bunch of speaking, the Fed is boring this week. Most indexes, for those of you who don't know, there was a 50 basis point cut. Right, this caused a rally. Do you guys understand that? 50 point cut caused a rally. Pretty obvious. Pretty standard, right? Oh yeah, and welcome to everybody on Twitter and whatever have you, right? Well, anyways. So the most indexes are falling after the rate cut rally, and I'll tell you guys this: the general consensus, the general narrative around the beginning of rate cuts, the start of a rate cutting cycle that coincides with no recession has historically led to strong equity returns 6 months, 12 months, and 18 months after the first cut. But I'm going to write that out for you guys so you can see where I'm going to write this out on the board for you guys to understand what it is exactly I'm referring to. The start of a rate cutting cycle that coincides with no recession has historically led to a, I guess you'd say, booming stock market. Oh, thank you. Okay. This right here, this statement right here on the board, this is a synopsis of the general consensus, the general narrative, the general idea of what's happening right now. Does this make sense, everybody? Doesn't make sense? Doesn't make sense? Okay. Can you guys guess what my problem with this narrative is? I don't really believe that we're not in a recession. That's my problem with it. Does that make sense? Like, we might be towards the end of one. Yeah. We might be towards the end of one, but inflation is overall still pretty bad. And they did, in fact, cut rates. They cut rates. So, my apologies, Mr. Producer. Yeah. And they cut rates. Does that make sense? So, like, it doesn't necessarily... Hi, JMac on T on Kick. They cut rates by 50 points, but inflation is still, like, high. Like, the inflation rate got lower. Does that make sense to you guys? Like, the rate of inflation got lower. And their goal here is to see if they can stimulate through making borrowing cheaper for the banks, investment into the economy that would cause economic growth that might outpace, yes, red carpet for you, that would outpace the rate of inflation. Like, okay, we have now hiked rates to the point of being extremely conservative with our banking, but now let's see if what the economy needs is liquidity injection, not liquidity injection. I hate using these fucking words. But making borrowing cheaper for banks so that they can invest it in places. I hope that makes sense. So, they're cutting rates right now. I think they might be doing it for political reasons. I'm not really sure. I think people in general are just ready for like a different, to get out of this, this season, this cycle that we're in, this type of like market cycle that we're in. And, yeah, I guess that's my entire opinion on it in a nutshell. Like, I'm going to assume that everybody who's making these decisions knows something I don't. That's it. Yeah, that's it. Let's see. The Fed might cut rates again. Right? Do you guys understand? Yeah. Well, that must be it, Javery. That must be it. But the Fed is likely going to cut rates again in October. That is at least the narrative, okay? I don't know if he's going to cut by 50 points. But it seems like probably a 25 basis point cut or even a... This is so fucking risky. Like, I really wouldn't want to be doing his job right now. Like there was a rate cut rally, right? 50 basis points, and it rallied, and then it corrected from the rally. Yeah, indeed. So, like, I would assume that he would, all the decisions that Jerome Powell's going to do this time around, I think that I drastically, like, differentiate from him here. Yeah, like, I think that I would rather, like, if he did a 50 basis point cut, I probably would have done a 25 basis point cut. And then what I would do is probably, yeah, exactly. So, like, if he's going to do a 50 point cut, I would probably, like, keep it still in October. Like, I would keep it flat, like, no change. Maddie, you know what? I have no idea. Yeah, that's hard to say. Anyways, if you guys aren't aware, PYRESWAP, we've done our own inflation cut. 0.7% to 0.1%. Did you guys aware? Were you guys aware? Okay. So anyways, why am I, yeah, this is a result of A1. Yes, A did win by a landslide. Would you guys agree? A1, I think it was like 35-6 when I called it. Yeah. So the emission rate is now 0.1%. Now, for this next week, this is an extremely violent cut in emissions, right? This is an extremely sudden and violent cut. You might see activity of, I guess you could call it emotional tumult. Does that make sense? I feel like this could upset people, right? However, what are we really doing when we make this type of decision, going from 0.7 to 0.1, which is extremely drastic, right? What are we doing? Do you guys know? Yeah. Well, Dr. Mac posts the upward chart emoji. Deflation back en route. Really what we're doing is we are reducing the size and probability of Pyre Phantom, Pyre AVAX, Pyre BNB getting sold. Does that make sense to you guys? Yeah, CJ. We actually are basically simulating end of Genesis. Yeah. Make sense to you guys? Yeah. 0.1% is still higher than end of Genesis. So end of Genesis is like 0%. Does that make sense? End of Genesis would just be like 0%. But like we're getting like as close as we can get to end of Genesis. Now, we might increase this later. Does that make sense? We might increase from 0.1% to a higher number, maybe after where prices go up. But yeah, we are reducing the size and probability of these tokens getting sold. And therefore, what ends up happening? Oh, and welcome Fox Warrior Gaming. Thank you so much with your emojis. Yeah, okay. Sorry, I'm talking to the other platforms that we stream to. Anyways, yeah. We're reducing the size and probability of these getting sold. Do you guys understand this? So this is arguably, we go back to rolling the dice. Now, when we do this, we're actually increasing the probability of it getting sold in the short term. So like, again, there's this chance that this, that the first week of this cut, this emission rate cut, could lead to, I guess you could say, price chart turbulence. But I think that where you'll really start seeing this rate paying off is like later this week and then like into the second week. Does that make sense? I expect that into the second week, third week of us doing this, that's where you'll really start seeing the price chart getting excitable. Does that make sense to you guys? I think that we did that. We got into a deflationary uptrend September 6th, and we got into a slight one, and we got some speculation activity out of it, and I think everybody's going to be a little bit more reserved this time around. Does that make sense? Until it kind of creates that feeding frenzy. Does that make sense to you guys? Yeah, and then of course it's that frenzy behavior that arguably, yeah, you get what I'm saying. And we're gonna keep this rate in. Does that make sense? So like right now, the chance of it getting sold is just like, well, the chance of new token getting sold extremely lower, right? Like if it is getting sold, it's still just getting compounded, which is like only half of it's getting sold, as it were. Maybe a little more than half. But yeah, the size and probability of it getting sold is much, much smaller, and therefore it allows the background volume of the DEX to actually begin outpacing the buy volume on these tokens. And then when you increase speculator volume, that also increases the background volume of the DEX. Does that make sense, everybody? Okay. Then, something very special about this DEX. By the way, we have now moved a majority of the spooky farms onto PYRESWAP. So I don't know if you guys saw, there is a slight uptick on the Phantom side TVL. So Phantom TVL has got like another 100 grand behind it now. Did you guys see that? You might have noticed. You might not have noticed. We are very, very close to the lost property contract. We are very, very close to the lost property contract getting deployed, which will allow people to claim this money from the farms they were in before. I'll tell you this. We need to... never mind. Okay. What I wanted to say there was something about this DEX that is very special about catalyzing volume involves a certain threshold. Make sense? So let's say that we have 2 ohm at like 0. Let's find out what we have. Okay, so we have 2 ohm at 0.0689. I'm gonna round it to 0.7. Does that make sense? And we have fucking Pyre Phantom at 0.05. I'm sorry. So just from Pyre Phantom being at this price, it has to 14x to get to where? Yeah, the mid level. Yeah, exactly. The threshold, if you will. The threshold. And the fact of the matter is that when the mid level happens, this also is an explosion. It's a surge of volume for the DEX. Does that make sense, you guys? Because the surge of volume to the DEX, this causes these ripples of speculation on how many other tokens. Yeah. Yeah, sure. Why not? Yeah. At least for like on Phantom, you can think of it like all of 2 ohm, 3 ohm, and Z ohm. Like, granted, I think Z ohm is like higher, right? So 3 ohm is kind of close to 2 ohm. Z ohm is a little bit higher, right? 0.13. Yeah, I understand what you mean, Javery. Well, actually, Javery is actually more than 3 on Phantom because the share token and even the bond token, when it's in liquidity, can, in theory, receive these ripple effects of speculative activity. Does that make sense? So 2 ohm going up in TWAP causes speculative behavior. Exactly. Causes speculative behavior on 2 share. Does that make sense to you guys? So, yeah, up to 9. We can say up to 9. We don't really have like Z bond and 3 bond in liquidity. I think 2 bond is in liquidity. But yeah, right now, I'll tell you guys, I'm a little bit, I don't know what we're going to do. Yeah, a little bit bullish, just slight. This is slight. I'm trying to keep contained. I try to stay objective with you guys. What I mean to say is, we might, depending on how this behaves, we might just try to go as high as we can go. Does that make sense? Like, so there's a chance that we might just keep at 0.1 and just like, okay, guys, when you're at the mid threshold, you should deepen liquidity. Does that make sense? But afterwards, like, when we hit that mid threshold, what's going to happen? Surges of inflation. Does that make sense? Like, when 2 ohm hits the mid threshold, that will be a surge of inflation onto Pyre Phantom. Does that make sense? Right? Do you guys get it? So let's assume that this is like the fucking threshold right here. and then you have like, let's say, right? And then you have like a and this one's gonna be a stick, of course. This might be stupid. This might be super long as well. Do you guys understand what I'm drawing here? And why this one has a candlestick here? Right, because it's not even that. It's the fact that metertrage itself is in fact selling the token, right? Like, at this point, you could be selling the token itself to deepen liquidity, which is one thing that's going to happen, because metertrage itself is also going to be selling it. So there's multiple reasons that you would see red candlesticks emerge from this line. No, this is not debt creation. This is in fact debt consolidation. Yeah, meeting is debt consolidation. Yep. You could argue that it's debt reclassification too, but yeah, this is a consolidation event. So 2 ohm, 3 ohm, and Z ohm debt, or really just 2 ohm at this point, 2 ohm debt gets consolidated into Pyre Phantom. This will cause 2 ohm to go up though. Does that make sense? So 2 ohm. So this happening though, Pyre Phantom's price goes down, but 2 ohms price goes up. Does that make sense? Then what happens is that this surge of inflation, what causes Pyre Phantom to downtrend? Inflation, right? So a surge of inflation causes Pyre Phantom to have to deal with that. Does that make sense? Pyre Phantom has to deal with that, right? And it'll downtrend, it'll flatten, and then it'll go back into an uptrend. Does that make sense to you guys? Okay, so like, we might just fucking ram at the wall full speed. Yeah, we'll just see how people react to the metertrage threshold. I will, of course, keep training and keep telling you guys what to do. Does that make sense? I would say that, like, when Pyre Phantom, or Pyre Gas in general, when Pyre Phantom is, let's say, greater than 80% of the TWAP of 2 ohm, 3 ohm, or Z ohm, you should deepen the Genesis pools. Make sense? Yeah. Any Genesis pools, to be honest. Any of them. Yeah. Yeah, any and all, actually. Any and all. So when Pyre Phantom's 80%, yeah. Yeah, Javery, that might happen in like 14 days. Yeah. Yeah, Pyre Gas is the most deflationary token in Web3. Yeah. Yeah, you'll see. Pyre Phantom is so deflationary that it needs metertrage to be inflation events that like hold it back. Does that make sense? Otherwise it just explodes. It'll be a 45-degree rally, but then of course it gets speculated higher than that. And who knows? We'll find out. Nope, Maddie, we don't need to burn. Yeah. Yeah, Maddie, we are trying to get to peg with the highest total supply possible of all tokens. Yeah. Deflation, yeah, is not just burning, it's also buying. I'll tell you guys this. The reason we're doing this is because, yeah, originally, my theory was this, that Pyre Phantom needed to be 6x the total supply of the largest burden. Does that make sense? Do you guys know what Pyre Phantom's largest burden is? 2 ohm, yeah. 2 ohm, you can see right on my screen, 5.7 million. 5.7 million. So in my mind, I'm like, okay, we need to get Pyre Phantom up to like 36 million. But anyways, upon recalculating, we're just going to try it with 4x. Does that make sense? We're 4x bigger than 2 ohm right now. So Pyre Phantom is 4x bigger. So we're just going to fucking try it with 4x. Because Pyre AVAX and Pyre BNB are already above 6x. Does that make sense? They're like 8x and 12x or some shit like that. Does that make sense? So the fact of the matter is 2 ohm was so big, we were trying to inflate and inflate and inflate so we would have a big enough total supply to actually carry the burden. But yeah, we don't need to burn, we don't need to like reduce the supply of these tokens. Yeah, we're trying to reduce the supply of the tomb forks. Does that make sense? Yeah, like, I think a lot of people get confused that like it's minting and burning. No, it's minting times selling and then burning times buying. It is inflation and deflation are like products. Yeah, so like when one of them goes up, they're also like a hyperbola. Does that make sense? So anyways, yeah, Pyre Phantom is now 4 times bigger than 2 ohm, so we're gonna fucking just send it. Yeah. Well, Jay, when I mean hyperbola, and I think you might already just understand me. If this is like minting, and this is selling, this red curve is called inflation. Does that make sense? So like, we have an inflation curve and a deflation curve, and all we're trying to do is say, like, let's say we have the negative version of this would actually be fucking deflation. All right, so let me try to draw on that as well. Right, and this is burn, buy. I'll make this one green. So all we're trying to do is effectively take this curve, right, and then make it like a larger curve. Does that make sense? We want the space underneath the curve to be larger. Make sense? Ish. It's not even really that. It's not even really space. It's not like integral space, but whatever. Close enough. Yeah, Maddie, that's not going to happen. Yeah, because everybody's going to now deepen their fucking LP. Yeah, and I don't think you realize that, like, there's a lot of Pyre gas in LP right now. There's a lot of Pyre gas in LP right now. I think that you guys might be doubting how much is in LP right now. And then, by the way, Maddie, once we have this fucking threshold, once we're at that meterage threshold, that's when everybody's going to deepen the LP again. Yeah, like everybody who's holding emissions, because you make more money deepening LP then. Yeah, it makes way more sense to deepen LP as deep as you can get when you're at the meterage threshold. Anyways, more on that later. Yeah, more transactions, Javery, and then of course both those tokens are gonna go up at the same pace at that point. Does that make sense? So there's no point, like, you're gonna get both those tokens climbing up. Does that make sense? And you're also gonna get swap fees, and you can even get Genesis APR. Does that make sense? So like literally now those tokens, they both climb together, and then you get fucking swap fees on top of that, and you get Genesis APR on top of that. Yeah, so it's like, it is definitely like the more lucrative investment to actually solve the problem. Anyways, you are getting swap fees. Yeah. Your LP, when it's staked in the Genesis pool, you get underlying swap fees. So meterage creates volume. Does everyone understand that? Meterage creates volume specifically on that pair, so it spikes. It spikes in actual swap fees. So like that's why you want to deploy the liquidity ahead of time, kind of. We'll find out, I guess. We'll find out. What a great experiment. What a great experiment, you guys. Yeah. I mean, what's the worst that happens, right? Yeah. I have no idea, Jabri. Yeah. Yeah. All Genesis pools. Yeah. When I said all Genesis pools, right? When I wrote it on the board, I said all Genesis pools, right? Maybe. Yeah, Jabri, I have no idea. Yeah. Yeah, spike right there. But then like, yeah. Yeah, you know what, Jabri, feel free to test it. Like that's a great way to like get data. Electronic, that is the channeler's job. Yeah. We can't get gratuity to 150%. Yeah, the channeler's job is to keep the incants high. Yeah. Yeah, or the channelers need to figure out how to tame the whales. Yeah. Yeah, the channelers can figure out how to tame the whales too. Yeah, by the way, you don't even have real whales right now. You don't even have real whales. Anybody who's whaling right now is like testing a theory without realizing that they're in fact not testing a theory. Yeah. Yeah. Never mind. Yeah. Like literally right now you have people testing things that are both fake. Does that make sense? Like you have multiple people testing things right now that are like fake, and it's like this contest of fakeness. So like you're not going to see what the real thing is until the user base grows anyway. So we're going to moon the chart, and we'll see maybe if some users show up for that. Yeah, by the way, gratuity doesn't like last through Genesis. Yeah. Like, sorry, gratuity ends when Genesis ends, is what I'm going to say. Gratuity ends when Genesis ends. So, like, yeah, that gratuity is where it's at now. The channeler's job is to keep yields high. Yeah, keep positive yield. All you got to do is just keep it net positive. Keep it net positive and keep it consistent. You don't have to make it the largest yield in the world, right? Right? Like, not like largest, like, actual chunk, right? Just the highest, right? Not the largest real yield, just the highest real yield. Yeah. Chandler's job. Figure it out. Electronic. Why wouldn't the chart going up feed the incantation witch vault? Yeah, like do you think that everybody with like dry powder just sitting there is going to be able to like control themselves? Yeah, Electronic. Web3 users allow their brains to be joysticked by a price chart. Does that make sense? Yeah, don't worry. It'll show up. On top of the fact that when you understand that certain people play this, they play it based on what that token is at its peg. Does that make sense? So if it's like, hey, if I'm getting a 1% EPR in a token that's 200x away from peg, really maybe it's a 200% EPR. Does that make sense? Or a 400% EPR, some shit like that. I don't fucking know. Yeah, anyways, yeah. Volume would be just fine. Yeah, volume will be just fine because fucking Web3 users will just let their brains be joysticked by price chart every time. By the way, guys, have you ever seen that diagram where we talk about the 6 ways to make money in PYRESWAP in phase 1? Yeah, technical analysis is not on that list. Yeah, like it's fundamental analysis, not TA. Yeah, fundamental analysis. Not fundamental analysis is a real way to make money. Technical analysis will fucking weird you out. Why is it reversing? They don't know about the Meade threshold, right? Like, understand the way it works, and you can make all the money you want. Yeah. Anyways, does anybody have any more questions? Because I'm actually out of material, and I might just get back to work if that's all right with you guys. I'm going to focus on marketing and content, and actually we're going to do some accounting today. Yeah, do you guys have any questions? Accounting, CJ, yeah. Yeah, I wish that the taxes were even like, yeah, yeah. CJ, I already don't. That doesn't mean I don't have to do accounting. Yeah, yeah, we already don't pay taxes, but like that still requires accounting. Okay, well then, yeah, I'm gonna ask the Mr. Producer to take us out of here. If you guys have any questions, feel free to DM me. And welcome to October, right? They say that crypto summer might be popping off. Have a great rest of your week. See you tomorrow.